All right, well, this is Adam Blanchard again, and what I would like to do now is take a look at an example, trying to utilize all the strategies and all the things that we just learned about in the presentation and apply them to a specific situation. In this video, what I'd like you to focus on is to look at potential problems and identify those problems, but also then come up with some preventative and some management strategies. So at this time, I would encourage you guys as an exercise is to get into small groups of 3 or 4 and kind of have teams. And what I encourage you to do is pause this video throughout to talk about what you see and what some potential problems might be, some potential preventative strategies, and possible management strategies. And so take a moment now to pause the video, get into your groups, and then you can restart the video. So this is the video that we saw earlier. And again, at the beginning, what I want you to do is start to jot down some potential and discuss in your small groups after the video what some of the potential problems might be. But let's go ahead and watch the video.
Shelby, go Put the dinosaur away.
I'm going to jump in.
Shelby Lauren, where would you like to go?
I like to go. Boy.
On your bottom. Do you want to sit in the center? There's your name. Sit and I'll come in. No. Bye-bye, dinosaur. I'll put him in blocks by your teacher. Let's go. Let's go. I'm going to put it. Do not hit me. I'll put him in blocks. Where would you like to go?
Okay, so now what I would want you to do is you can go ahead and pause this video, and you can identify the different problems that you might have seen in the video. And talk amongst yourselves about the video and what you might have seen that was wrong. You can go ahead and pause it now. All right, so you guys might have come up with a number of different things that were wrong about that video and what potential problems occurred. And so what I'm about to talk about is potentially what could have been. You may have come up with something on your own, but these were some of the things that I had come up with as I was watching the video. So one of the first things that you see are limitations in the quality of the environment. So this teacher really struggled to, as it seems, we don't know a whole lot of information, but it does seem like she had some pretty problematic classroom designs. So it was very unclear from the video what actually was going on. There were a lot of activities happening all at the same time. So it appeared as though there was some sort of snack time happening at the same time, maybe free play was happening. And so that was kind of problematic, right? You had some child sitting at the table folding what looked like washcloths, but you also had a child that kept getting up from the table and moving, but there was nothing in front of him that appeared as though was keeping him engaged. And so the activities were not structured enough to keep the children's engagement. But other things that you saw that were problematic about the classroom design was the children sitting really close together doing different things. So that could be problematic. And like I said, the kids were not, it did not seem like there was very much organization. Another issue, though, that you saw were the children did not know what the expectations or the rules were. Right? So the child brought a toy to snack time. And not only that may, in one situation that might not be a problem, but in this situation, it certainly caused a problem because it was interfering and being intrusive to another child. So it appeared as though the expectations for the classroom were not very well thought out, nor were they implemented. And so rules and screaming and quiet voices and all of these kinds of things were not reviewed. And again, I'm making some assumptions here, but the expectations and the rules did not appear as though they were consistently followed through or implemented. I mentioned that the schedule and the routine of that seemed very chaotic, so there was no structure whatsoever to what was going on at that time in the classroom. And so that was certainly a potential problem. So, you know, she appeared to be doing some sort of paperwork at the time that some children were having a snack and these kinds of things. So it was very just chaotic, and the schedule and the routine seemed very off. There did not seem to be any kind of planning for transitions. She at one point tried to get a child who moved away from the table. She went over across the room, grabbed him. Good thing she didn't yell at him, but grabbed him and brought him back to the table, and then engaged him in some sort of, what do you want to do? But then became very distracted by the screaming that was going on next to her. So the transitions, the scheduling, the rules, classroom design was pretty limited. So there are other limitations, though. Some other problems is that there were limitations in her responsiveness and support of the kids. There were certainly poor interactions that were going on. The intrusive child was bothering one child, and he ended up engaging in some aggressive behavior towards him, and then the other child started screaming. So there was no fostering. It was pretty clear that there had been no fostering of positive interactions. But to make matters worse, she reacted to those challenging behaviors rather than responding. Rather than responding with warm, understanding, man, she really let let it go way too far. She didn't respond to the escalating behavior until it got to like its worst possible, but before it got too bad. It got so bad that when she tried to intervene, the one child was so upset that he started hitting her. And of course, that caused her to react instead of respond appropriately. Her interactions generally lacked warmth, even when she was trying to get the child to choose an activity. It was just really poorly done. It was just kind of like, "What do you want to do?" Instead of being more warm. And you could just tell watching that video. I mentioned in the previous presentation the climate. Ooh, the climate. The climate was horrible, right? It was loud, it was disorganized. And so if you were to walk into that classroom, you could kind of feel the poor or the limitations in the responsive and the supportive environment. It did not feel that way at all. Another thing that she seemed to struggle with was teaching the children problem-solving strategies and emotional regulation skills. So all of these things were potentially problematic. So what could she have done differently? I want you to think about the preventative strategies. Think about possible preventative strategies that the teacher could possibly have implemented prior to it becoming this bad. So pause the video, talk in your groups about what possibly could have occurred to help prevent some of these behaviors. So here are some things that I came up with that may have helped prevent all of this from occurring in the first place. The teacher could have improved the layout of the class, of how things are laid out. She could have reassessed for possible improvements in the activities that were available. She really does need to reassess the classroom expectations and actually teach the children the expectations and the rules. And so she could then have, well, we're going to get into management strategies. One of the things that was problematic that you saw was that these children were not engaged in any of the activities that they were supposed to be doing. And so you had the children who were eating the snack. They weren't eating their snack. I never saw one of them eat. They were fighting. And so figure out a way to engage those children to prevent the problematic behavior. Prepare better for transitions. Have a plan for how a child is going to move from one area of the room to another. She could have certainly done that. She could have promoted more positive interactions between the peers. She could have done some work with scripted stories, perhaps, to teach how we interact with our friends, and how if we encounter a problem, how to do that better. So now let's talk a little bit about management strategies. Since we can't prevent all behavior problems, we could do some things that could severely help that classroom from being so chaotic. Now let's talk a little bit about some of the management strategies. So you may want to take a moment, pause the video, and discuss within your group what are some management strategies that would have helped this teacher improve and had a better day. All right. So, like I said, management strategies. I'm coming up with some management strategies, but perhaps you guys came up with some different ones through your discussions. So, one of the first things that I would do to manage that behavior is to be more aware of escalating behavior. She was more focused on the child getting up and moving away from the table than she was the actual challenging behavior. I didn't see anything challenging per se on the surface from the child leaving the table, but she focused her attention to get that child to come back to the table, when in fact she should have actually paid more attention to the two children that were escalating in their challenging behaviors, swatting at each other and being aggressive. She could have managed that situation much better if she would have paid attention to the escalating behavior and then redirected that behavior at the early end, rather than waiting until it got to the point of screaming and hitting, maybe she could have intervened earlier to prevent any escalation of that behavior going forward. Of course, she could have responded to the challenging behavior rather than reacting as she did. So using more warm interactions can help reduce that challenging behavior and help the teacher intervene more appropriately, using the responding to those things rather than reacting with emotion. She became angry. Although those things can happen, we will become angry with kids sometimes, but we need to control and model how we control and manage and regulate our own behavior. She could have used redirection rather than just getting on, we don't do that, oh, Mr. Dinosaur is going away. That was kind of threatening, right? So instead of that, used redirection and use more verbal redirection. She could have used a gestural redirection. She could have redirected that behavior. She could have used positive reinforcement, right? So notice any kind of positive behavior, giving a verbal redirection cue, and then moving on to reinforce more positive behavior. So thank you guys for listening to this presentation. I hope you learned something. I hope that you learned that by looking at this video and seeing how, if we do not use preventative strategies and accurate and appropriate management strategies, we can run into some major problems. So I hope you enjoyed this video and this exercise, and I hope that you can take some of this back to your classrooms and improve and support these children in all of their academic endeavors. Thank you, guys.